Sam, I'm just going to ask. I noticed that you've got a blurred background for your video today. Can you just tell everyone why? Because it's so funny.
Yes, I will apologise for this. So it's interesting we're talking about burnout, because there's burnout at work and then there's stress and burnout in your personal life in the middle of a massive kitchen renovation. So unfortunately, my kitchen is currently in the dining room, which is where I'm sat. I won't tell you what's behind the blur, but it wouldn't be suitable for this podcast.
Let's just go with the cereal boxes, shall we?
Cereal boxes for sure.
But actually, that's a really good point, because the official definition of burnout is entirely work related stuff. But I think everybody who I've spoken to on this podcast and the teachers I speak to and leaders, they all say if stuff's going on at home, it's absolutely going to contribute to the general feeling of overwhelm that we have. And I think your experience absolutely backs that up.
And I think the other sort of part of that is when there's other things going on in your life that are difficult, if you are somebody who gets a lot of validation, a lot of joy, a lot of purpose from your work, like I do, the easy thing to do is to overwork, because it's a safer space or a place where you can almost hide from everything else. And then that can lead to burnout as well. Even if you're really enjoying what you're doing and you're doing some of it out of hours and willingly, it can lead to some of the same results, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with it. And that was me, because I burnt out when I loved my job and I was working way too many hours, but I was seeing an impact from what I did. And life was tough sometimes. So, yeah, it completely discombobulated everything. But I want to ask you, really, can you tell us about a time where you have experienced significant stress and the impact at the time and the sort of knock on for you now?
Yeah, I think it sort of crept up on me and then exploded. So a lot, going back to my sort of full-time teaching career, around sort of maybe 9 or 10 years in, I'd had 3 children along the way. So that's tricky in itself, navigating how you balance teaching with family commitments and things like that. And I, towards the end of my full-time teaching career, ended up working in a school as part of a secondment from the multi-academy trust that I was working in at the time. And it was a really tough school. And it was a broken school, and it was just becoming more broken. It was one of those stuck schools that had been sort of stuck in an Ofsted category for a long time. And we know the impact that has on communities, on staff. And after I'd been there for a few months, a new leadership team was sent in to sort of, help to improve the school. And there was just a total mismatch of the brokenness of that school and the approach of that leadership team. There was no nurture, there was no care, there was no listening, there was no understanding. There was just, we have an approach and you're going to use it, and it didn't land well. I think for me at that point in my career, I'd been working so hard for a long time, and I think there are some things here that are specific to when you've got family and caring responsibilities, that you balance that continual guilt of not doing either thing properly and then trying to overcompensate in all sorts of ways. And so although I loved teaching, it's always meant everything to me. I wanted to be a good mother as well, and that point in my life this happened. How that was approached, how that leadership team behaved in some ways that affected lots of people and really affected me personally, but then became a sort of trigger, I suppose, where I couldn't continue in that way. And it was made very difficult for me to stay. And I think that often happens, in schools when teams like this come in. The much easier thing to do is to clear the decks and start again. That's the easy thing. But what you lose then, of course, is sight of what's best for the children and the community, and the impact on individuals is lost or not cared about. So essentially, there was a day where it sort of all got on top of me, and I walked out of the school and got in my car and drove away and didn't go back, and was signed off with stress immediately. And as somebody who would never, thankfully experienced anything like that in my life, not really struggled with my mental health. I thought I was managing, and I thought I had it sort of all under control. And then it just hit me. And that was a really sort of hard time in my life. It was quite a dark time in lots of ways, and it bled into lots of my relationships, my feelings of self-worth, my feelings of being a good mother to my children. It was a very humiliating experience. And I had, been proud, I think, of my teaching career and the impact I thought I'd had. And it kind of imploded at that point, and I didn't really expect it to. It kind of just suddenly hit me.
Yeah, there's something that really triggers in me there because I remember when I burnt out and the guilt and the shame and the feelings of humiliation, letting my team down, letting my family down, feeling such a failure. How did you come back from that?
So suddenly I was faced with a period of time where, I mean, I was signed off initially for 2 weeks, and then it went back and became longer, and it was coming towards the summer. So I knew I wasn't going to go back. I know I couldn't go back. And all the time I was being sent these threatening letters through the post of, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And I hadn't done anything wrong. It was clearly targeted, and it wasn't just me. But I suddenly had all this time. So I kind of woke up the next morning. I was like, what am I going to do today? When you fill your days with work. So I guess I made myself a little routine. So I'm lucky I live near a really lovely park in Leeds. And I was like, okay, every morning I'm going to get up, I'm going to take my kids to school, and then I'm going to go to the park, and I'm going to go for a run or a walk for a period of time. So I knew, I didn't want to, but I knew in my head the right things to do. I need to have fresh air. I need to have exercise. I need to have a structure to my day. Otherwise I'm going to go mad. And that, I was able to sort of carry on like that for a bit. I was still in communication with, people from the school who were, and actually a couple of them, unfortunately, have been put in a similar position. I made really good friends at that school who we were really emotionally able to support each other, and still do actually now. So I was able to really lean on them. I started looking for another job sort of quite quickly, and I was super lucky that it didn't take that long, but it was a job outside of teaching, working in teacher development. When I started that job in, I think it was the August of that year. It was around April, May that this happened. And it only was sort of 6 weeks where I felt like I was out of a job. So once that was confirmed and you know where you're going, it then becomes sort of easier to manage. I'm glad that happened quickly, because I think what would have happened is it would have eroded my self-confidence more and more and more over time. I was able to, when I started that job, meet a group of people who unfortunately had similar experiences. It was a job, it attracted ex-teachers, and it was such a healing experience. Those people, I hope they know the impact that had on me, because by coming together, it validated what happened to me. And we just had the most joyous time the next kind of 3 years working together. And I was able to go and work with lots of schools across the country, but not in the capacity where I was so close to it, because I felt I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have taken a job back in a school in that way. But I felt I was able to still really connect with leaders and teachers. So I had that healing period. And then eventually, sort of after 3 years, I felt I'm ready now to be back in a school situation. And I'd felt I had such opportunities to develop my learning, my skills, my expertise. So when I was ready in terms of my skill set, and I was ready emotionally, and then came into this mat where I work now, where I've just been so lucky that the people that I work with and for are similarly minded, and that's been really healing as well. But what I'm able to do now is to use that experience to shape the work that I do. And that's been part of the healing for me, but hopefully part of the impact that we can have as an organisation as well.